I always mess up the names. Okay, sorry. I'll do that again. If someone messes up a name in the episode, it's me. Okay, let's try that again. Hello, and welcome to another episode of SnarkSquad Pod, the media podcast where we want to be Thandie Newton for Halloween. My name is Marines.
My name is Nicole Sweeney.
And today, joining us, we have...
I'm Caitlin Hoffmeister, and I make videos on the internet for a job and went to film school and want to be Charlize Theron when I grow up.
You also have your own podcast.
I do. I have my own podcast called You're Doing Just Fine, where I talk to people about failures and shortcomings and how those are a part of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason Caitlin wants to be Charlize Theron when she grows up is that we are talking about Atomic Blonde today, the 2017 movie starring Charlize Theron, and I'm going to kick it back to Caitlin for the plot synopsis.
Okay. Charlize Theron is a spy, assumingly from Britain, named Lorraine, and her boyfriend, maybe spy, maybe make, has just been killed, and she has to go to Berlin and clean up this mess for the crown. As soon as she gets to Berlin, she is picked up by some Russians who try to kill her, but luckily she's wearing stilettos, and she stabs them and stops the car, and then her real ride, played by James McAvoy, who's her counterpart in Berlin, picks her up, and they go on their merry way, and she's not supposed to trust anyone. And all of this is a frame story. I should have started with that, where she's talking to her British boss about what went wrong in Berlin and how everybody got killed. And so she has to get the list is going to reveal what every undercover agent is and who is a double agent. Particularly, everyone's after a double agent named Satchel. Thank you. And so Satchel is on this list, which is in a watch, and this cute little Russian dude memorized the list, and so they got to get him out of Berlin. And her David Percival, who is played by James McAvoy, keeps yucking it up, and he's like, quote unquote, gone native, because he's just like crazy in East Berlin and just parties all the time and like sells or trades like jeans and bourbon for information. And then
that is always what I'm willing to give people information for.
Yes. And so they're trying to work together. It's not working. Somebody is one step ahead of Lorraine throughout, and she's constantly getting thwarted, and so she thinks she's been bugged. She meets a cute French girl who is a terrible spy, but they become friends / lovers. And Lorraine's putting the pieces together and eventually figures out, I guess, like, she tries to get a watch. She tries to get her guy out. And the best scene of the whole movie is when she's trying to get her little Russian guy out, and she uses umbrellas because she knows that Percival is a double agent and going to try and kill her guy. It just skipped a lot of things, I think.
Yeah, it's a spy movie.
It's a spy movie. So there's a lot of like talky, quiet scenes that you think you're not supposed to pay attention to, but you have to pay attention because John Goodman's in them, and anytime John Goodman shows up, it's really important. And then she's trying to get her Russian guy out of East Berlin.
He's actually
family.
German.
So, he's German.
Yes, because he's a Stasi officer. So he would be like East German.
Oh, so that's why he yells at her to work on her German.
Oh,
plot twist. The Russians are German.
Yes.
He's German, but he's given up the Russians, and they're mad at him, and they're trying to kill him. And I thought he was a double agent for the Russians. Oh. It's very confusing who is Russian, confusing. Because then you're like, oh, you're Russian? No, you're German. No, you're Russian.
That's true.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
He's definitely
he's German. You're right.
Okay.
And so she's trying to get her little German guy named Spyglass.
Spyglass.
Is his name. And she's trying to get Spyglass out, and there's this really long, amazing fight scene. He doesn't make it. but not for lack of trying, because we've seen Charlize Theron underwater lots of times, and they go underwater in a car after an amazing fight scene, and he just dies on her.
And so I hate when that happens.
Yeah. And so then she's trying to get out of there. It's all gone to hell. Her French lover friend intern clues her in that gives her pictures. Oh my gosh. Okay. So within this frame story, she's telling everybody what's going on. There's also random scenes of her just like splicing film together, and you're like, that's a weird scene. And then it's like, oh, did we really need that flashback to know that she got invited to this party? That's strange. And then her lover French girlfriend gives her pictures of Percival betraying her. And so then she has all this great stuff to know that Percival is no good to her anyway. So she kills him, and she says, I got you, Satchel. And he's like, oh, that's how it's going to play.
Because she's Satchel.
Because she's Satchel.
Surprise!
And so, yeah, because she's amazing. And, so then she's like with her British boss, and she's like, when's my dinner with the queen? And because I solved this and set Percival up, because she's been splicing together all the microfilm of him talking, tape, I guess is what it is.
Sure.
And then she goes to Russia, and you're like, oh, she's not British. She's Russian. She's working for the Russians.
Paris.
That's
she's
okay.
In Paris when
she's in Paris with the Russians.
Yes.
I just really think you want everything to be Russian.
I do. And like the Russians just show up surprised throughout this movie. And so they lay out the mat, and they're going to kill Satchel, and you think that she's dating her boss, and she's like, no. We're not dating. And also, you're not my boss. And she kills them all, except for her one friend, who was her East German friend with the cool haircut, who helped her all along. Such a loyal friend.
Yeah.
Also
really?
didn't die. Yeah.
Yeah, good buddy.
Yeah. And so then, when she has been talking to her German boss, she's been talking to John Goodman, who's head of the CIA, and she hates him and doesn't want him there. But then she gets on an airplane with him, and in her very flat American accent goes, let's go home. And she's Satchel, and it's amazing. And then you're like, America! And then, but really you're just like,
coming back around.
Yeah. You wondered why John Goodman was here the whole time. Now we know.
Because America.
That was a very delightful plot synopsis.
I recommend seeing the movie, because you probably learned nothing about it from my plot synopsis, except that there could be Russians anywhere, and at any moment you could be in Russia.
I mean, to be fair,
Probably could.
The plot probably was not the strongest part of this movie. So the fact that
the plot is super fucking complicated and convoluted because it's a spy movie.
Right.
I will say, I don't know. I'm interrupting because I want to clarify that there is a difference, that this is like a form thing also. Like strongest, I don't know whether or not that's an inherent weakness of it, is like there's a separate conversation, but like if you're going to talk about the strength or weakness of the plot, you also have to acknowledge that like this convoluted messiness is a function of the form of spy movies.
Yeah.
Like, this is how they are.
Yeah.
So anyway, as you were saying.
Yeah, that was just my point. I think that I get what you're saying, like form. So we had this very interesting conversation, not on last week's podcast, but I think it was, I don't know if it was directly tied in person, Sweeney and I. And we were talking about people who will hear our Game of Thrones podcast and kind of say that, well, fantasy is not for you because we didn't enjoy that piece of fantasy. Not that we didn't enjoy it. We both really enjoyed it. There were elements of like the wordiness and the world building that both were not for us. But then people will assume that fantasy in general is not something we can consume. That is also applicable here. I think it had plot weaknesses in some areas where it wasn't probably the strongest thing that it did, but it's not because it's a spy movie and that's the way spy movies are, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, you know, that was kind of skipping the thing that we always skip, even though we like to pretend we're consistent with it. It's the baseline question of, did you like this? So I will start with Nicole. Nicole, did you like this?
I fucking love this movie.
I couldn't tell.
When we were first mapping out stuff for the podcast, this is one of the first movies we put on the list, in part because both of us are a little bit antsy about movies in general because it's not either one of our go-to. Like, I am definitely 100% more of a TV person. Like that's my wheelhouse. I consume a shit ton of television. And so I feel more comfortable talking about it. And because we spend so much time talking about TV, there's also this additional anxiety with movies of like, I don't know how we're going to have as much content around a movie, right? Like it's one thing, it's just like a comparative thing to say, okay, we're going to produce an hour of content around 13 hours of a TV show versus an hour of content around a 2-hour movie. Right. And so there's that antsiness. But this is one that we put on the list in part because when we were having this back and forth, I was like, yes, I definitely super love this. And Mari was like, okay, the fact that one of us has a strong opinion is like, that's grounds
a good thing to pay attention to.
I think we can do this because there exists at least one strong opinion, basically. Yeah. So yeah, Caitlin.
Yeah, I also fucking loved this movie. Like, I like action adventure just fine. I'm not super interested in watching a bunch of, like, people, like we were saying, like, maybe fantasy is not for you. I always thought maybe action adventure wasn't for me, even though I like it. But I'm like, watching a bunch of white dudes run around, not the most interesting thing to do. So, yeah, like, having, like, a badass woman, like, just be doing all these things and like thinking about the camera people doing all these things with her is incredible. And like I think the plot is really complicated and sometimes unclear, but I think all the elements are there. Like the fact that like all the elements are there. So you're not like, wait, what happened? Like you're more, I mean, you can be like, wait, who's Russian? But like, but there's never like, I don't get that. It's like, you're there with her throughout, and so I loved that and just was on the like just like having a blast like the whole time I was watching it. It's very much like a popcorn fun movie.
Yes.
Yeah. I also enjoyed it. I watched it originally when it was released in theater. And I literally watch a handful of movies in the movie theater each year. So the fact that I went to go see it is like a big deal. And I went to go see it and I enjoyed it. I walked away with a positive experience after watching it. It probably wasn't a movie I ever was going to watch again. But then Nicole was like, yeah, we are. And I was like, okay, yeah, we are. So, and it's fine. Like I enjoyed watching it again, but again, I'm not going to probably walk away from this experience and watch it again, but I had fun while I did.
How did you feel watching it again? Because I felt like more stuff was clear to me the second time watching it. Like I had a blast the first time, but like, I would not have been able to do a synopsis as great as
100%.
So maybe 5 more times of watching it, I could.
Yeah, 100%. I before. In between like planning to do this and thinking about my first experience watching the movie, like I was prepared. I didn't have a lot of feelings, I told Nicole, so the fact that she had the strong feelings was great because I didn't know what I was going to say. The one thing that I wanted to say was that I had no idea really what happened in the plot. I walked away from the theater like, yeah, I had fun. That was great. That was like visually stunning, like a lot of great things there. I wouldn't know how to tell somebody what had happened in the plot. Watching it again, I feel like that was more my fault than the movie's fault. I do think some things are definitely unclear, but I think I was so lost in the fun of it the first time around, I wasn't paying attention to like names of people. And so when they kept referencing like this person and that person, I was like, who? So there was definitely a level of it becoming more clear to me and easier to follow the second time around than my first experience.
So this, for me, I should also add, like, I also saw this in the theater right around the time it came out, is one of maybe half a dozen movies I saw in the theater last year. Mm-hmm. Because it is a movie that I was super hyped for. Like, I remember when the first full trailer came out, I probably watched it like 20 times. That day, I have like a weird interest in Cold War history. Like that, like, is a thing that I'm just really fascinated by. And like, I don't know, stuff that is situated in that is interesting to me. And like lady spies.
Yeah.
I'm here for lady spies.
Yeah.
The Americans on FX is probably one of my favorite shows on TV right now. And Charlize Theron is just so fucking cool. And like the whole sort of neon 80s aesthetic, which this movie is very much, and you can tell just from the trailer, it is dripping in that sort of aesthetic.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, like the music, everything about this. I saw the trailer and I was like, I didn't know that I've been waiting for this movie, but I've been waiting for this movie. And then like I saw it in the theater and it was indeed everything. I mean, I think it is unfortunate that they give away the best sequence of the movie in the trailer, or one of the two best sequences in the movie, the bit where she jumps off the balcony or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is
I
just
love
like,
that. I love it.
why you gotta spoil that?
Yeah.
But the experience of being in the theater was like everything that I dreamed it would be. There's more gore in this than I'm normally into, but it was done in a way that didn't upset me in the way that it usually does, and I'm not entirely sure why. All of this is to say that like I'm very familiar with spy stuff, and so there's an element of the like, I don't know, you guys got to keep up with all the names, it's coming at you fast and quick. That is, I don't disagree that there are shortcomings in the plot. I think they were just things that I was like primed to be like, yeah, like that's I am ready. I went into it ready for all of that stuff, and so I think that is why it did not bother me, or in the same way that I think that was probably one of the biggest critiques that people had of the movie, and it's something that part of me was like, hey, but I mean, also it's fair.
Yeah.
It's just it is the difference in the way that you are going into viewing things. Also, going back to that, like, you know, the comment about fantasy, like there are a lot of people who their love of fantasy is that they do just want to go sit and look around this weird world, and they're not really that interested in like plot progression, which is the exact opposite.
They're just maybe just stories aren't really for them. Like,
Maybe you just want a giant world.
yeah. Just go outside.
Anyway, so yeah.
I will say that I don't want to fault the movie in a way that I'm saying that I think it did something bad. So we reference a lot things that we've said in previous podcasts. But when we were talking about The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, we talked about how Joel was kind of an empty shell of a character, like he was probably the least developed, but we didn't care because that was a treatment like women get all the time, and the fact that it was Joel and he's a fuckboy and nobody cares about him, like that was fine with us. So yes, the plot was a little convoluted, a little unclear at times, and I feel like some of the action drowned it out a little, in a way that I think it was meant to be. I mean, that was the centerpiece of the movie, but again, that is every action movie ever. So the fact that we're getting it now with a female lead and a badass, and in a way that is so like gory and I don't know, that whole part of it even added to me the experience of getting to see that. So no, I don't care. Like, we can't criticize that movie for it because it's been done before, but now, like, yay, Charlize Theron.
Yeah. And it's also like, I always like, especially if I like a movie or any piece of content that I like I'm like, okay, well, they're probably doing that on purpose. So like, I think you guys talked about with Joel, you're like, oh, it's probably like a creative decision to have him be not that well fleshed out because that's what his counterpart would get. I don't know if that was something that you guys talked about, but that's what I was thinking when I listened to that podcast. So with Atomic Blonde, sometimes also I think for me, what I'm experiencing as I'm getting the information from the movie is changing. So when the first guy dies in the beginning and then you find the picture of her, of Charlize Theron and him, you're like, oh, they're lovers. Like, she does know him really well. And that's a totally human reaction, but not a spy reaction. Like, she was working him. Like, and so that changes over time. And I'm still not sure how she cared about him. And then you see the picture of Percival and him, and he's like, oh, did I not tell you we were friends? And so like there's a whole lot that's unsaid that they just have to think and try and figure out from each other that is never going to be, I'm never going to be sure of that. And I liked that.
Right. Yeah. You will never get the clear answers. Like what was her relationship with the dead spy?
Yeah. James,
whatever.
Maybe?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. But she's a double agent.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't even know where she's from or what her real name is.
Right. And like, and how much, what did he tell Percival and whatever.
Yeah.
Yes. All of that is like up in the air and like intentionally and by design. And that is one of those things that I think is very much this is something we talk about all the time, but like just preference-y type things. Like either that is going to be something that's like going to jive with you and you're going to be into that, which I as the camp I fall into, or there's going to be something that annoys the shit out of you because like you want those answers.
Right.
I think part of the criticism that I saw was also that Lorraine's character was underdeveloped or there was no character development, blah, 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 which feeds into this whole thing we're saying, like, things are unsaid, whatever.
She's a professional.
That's what I'm saying. It's like a spy movie. Yes. What kind of character development do you want? Not that the story is like, doesn't need it, but the whole idea is that she's masking who she is because she is a spy. Like, what are you complaining about?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. She's doing her fucking job.
Yeah.
As a spy.
I also think that we get a lot of I think that just because you don't have a backstory doesn't mean there's no character development. Like I think we get a lot from her with the French spy who she cares for. Mm-hmm. Like she's definitely using her for information. But when Percival kills her, she's like, "Why did you have to kill her? Like she was not good at this job, but that doesn't mean you have to kill her." Like
in her defense, in Delphine's defense, she did manage to get all, follow Percival and get all the pictures of Percival and stuff. Yeah. She had some skills.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
She maybe wasn't, she just wasn't cut out
She was a freshman in this world of high-class professionals.
Yes.
Yeah. She was very talented.
She was not ready for this job.
I mean, at the end of the day, she probably had the same thing going on that what's his character's Percival had going on, and that neither of them wanted to do their job anymore. The spy thing, I thought it was going to be this one thing, and now he wants to keep trading jeans, and she doesn't want to do that. She wants to be a poet, or she wants to be a rock star. Things change.
I hadn't thought about that, but totally. Yeah.
I think also to this point of character development and whatnot, a lot of credit for what I did take away from this in terms of the amount of character that is there must be given to this ridiculous list of actors. Everyone just did so much heavy lifting.
Yes.
But
there were no slackers.
No. Yeah. Charlize Theron was great. James McAvoy was great. Eddie Marsan as Spyglass had very little. He was only in a handful of scenes, but just
super powerful.
Amazing. The bit when they shave off his mustache, there's just this look that is it's half a second of a thing, but I'm like, oh my God, I have all of these feelings for you right now. And Sophia Boutella as Delphine, everyone, all great. All great.
James McAvoy to me is always going to be Mr. Tumnus from Narnia. So, totally unfairly. I'm sure he's done other things. So when I first saw him in
a lot of other things,
that's not even you. That might be you might be the only person who always identifies in that way, which is awesome.
It's good.
So when I saw him here, I was like, him as a spy. But yeah, I bought it.
You came around.
I came around. Totally bought Charlie. I mean, everybody was selling what they had to sell in this movie. Everybody who looked like they were there to kick my ass, looked like they could kick my ass, etc. It was well done from top to bottom, well acted.
Yeah. We were in the office today, we were kind of joking about red shirts, and there were no red shirts. A lot of people died, but they fought hard before they died. There was no easy kills, no everything was very in there.
I thought about this because of that element of like it being very bloody, and just thinking again back to last episode when we were talking about Westworld and collateral damage. I think that there didn't really feel like there was collateral damage here because of that element of it. Like it felt earned. Like everything was very hard fought and hard won. And there was even a scene at the very end, the long extended cut, like the final showed.
Yes, the other contender for best.
It's like it's almost I think like 10 minutes of like this extended sequence of events. And there's one point where she's fighting a couple men on stairs, and like multiple times I'm like, dudes, stay down, but they keep getting back up. And there's even a point where he's like coming upstairs towards her, but he's so like beaten down that he ends up just falling backwards and taking himself out. Collapsing. But it's that element of like they were fighting to the bitter end that made you feel like everything was very earned by our protagonist, but also that there wasn't that like not needless, but that like extra collateral damage where it's just like people and bodies falling all over the place, and where that idea of like the spy being very good at their jobs means that they walk away without a scratch or a scrape. Where here she's very good at her job, and we're told, and we see that multiple times, but she's also getting the crap beat out of her.
That sequence, so I have mentioned before that I'm not a big fan of like blood and gore normally, and obviously that whole sequence is quite bloody, understandably. But then, much to my surprise, I like actually laughed in the theater when you get to the very end of it. Yes. Yeah. Her and the last man standing, when they're like stumbling around, like neither of them can stand, and like that struggle, I just like, it was, like so well done. And I don't know, I guess maybe I just don't watch enough action movies and like maybe this happens more often than I realize, but I feel like that kind of sequence is rare, like to actually see them like struggling and like fighting to the last in that way.
Yeah, and they become like, in an odd way, they're adversaries, obviously, but they become sort of a team, like at the end, where they're working so hard, and they like rest at the same time and go back at it at the same time, and there's like this odd sort of mutual respect,
professional courtesy.
This is what we have to do. And like I forgot. I remembered that scene and was really excited to rewatch it, but I forgot how the camera moved, and I was like talking about them getting all bloody, and someone pointed out to me, how did they do that? And I was like, oh yeah, they weren't really fighting, they're actors. And so I had to like watch really closely, and it looks so random and frantic, but it's so well placed when somebody is off camera and you know that there's no room there, and so the actors must be applying their own blood or something. Like I would love to see behind the scenes footage of how they were like got out of the shot, hit yourself in the face with blood or something, how they were doing that, because it's so believable, the makeup.
Yes. I also really want to watch that sequence with somebody who has a better eye for stuff like this, to have it pointed out to me where the actual cuts are, because
there's one spot where you're like, oh, there it is.
The last time I watched it was on a plane, and I was trying to look for it, which was like not the best. It was like on the like little tiny plane airplane screen was not the best.
I can imagine you like I can imagine you on the plane like
that sequence. I was like, I'm gonna find it. I didn't.
There's one cut that I noticed that is so good that I was like, did he really just wipe frame, or did they cut there? And I'm like, they must have cut there, because why not?
Right.
But like, it was such a clean wipe.
They did a very good job of making it look like a single take. Is mostly what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's incredible.
It's good.
Yeah. Oh, I want to jump up and down now and like kick.
Go kick things. You mentioned comparing this to certain things we talked about in our Westworld episode last week, and this reminds me that I mentioned that I wanted to put a pin in the nudity conversation, because I feel like that is something that is pertinent to this movie. Obviously, there's way less nudity here than there was in Westworld. Westworld is just like constant naked people. However, I don't know, this is just like a small thing, but like I appreciated that Charlize Theron's body is routinely shown naked, but in a like almost never in a sexual way. Like it is not sexual. Like she's bruised. She's getting into the ice baths and like it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, she's alone in her space that she's made, like, when she's naked. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I 100% agree, and I think that it is probably pretty funny, but not like in a ha-ha way, but in a sad way, that I still read reviews that were talking about Charlize Theron's nudity and how sexualized it was in this movie. And I think, and I think that probably just goes back to like a you problem and not a movie problem, in that like the female nudity is always going to be sexualized for some people. And I thought that this was probably doing the opposite of that, of being very, and it feeds into what we were talking about, it being almost like a realist about the violence of these spy movies and showing us like, hey, this is doing actual physical harm to her. Like it hurts. It's not fun. It's not glamorized. And it wasn't glamorized in that aspect. Everything else is very showy. But in those moments where she's like naked and bruised, there was a certain gut punch to it that I really appreciated as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's like moody 80s light, like, but nobody thinks that's sexy. Right?
It's got like gross motel.
Yeah. Listen, this again probably says more about me than anything else, but the last time I watched a movie with that heavy of a blue tint, it was Twilight. So
you're like waiting for her to sparkle or something.
Definitely not sexy is what I'm saying.
There's the interesting thing about the bath scenes too is like, because we got a couple of them, and it was not just to see her naked and not just to see the bruise. Like I felt like this movie did a really good job of like, before she did anything that was incredible, like they set you up to believe it. So like going underwater in the car and how much she's aware, she goes underwater in the bath and rolls over, and we see her face underwater very calm and very like collected in the bath. So it's not unbelievable that she can hold her breath for a long time. Or like we see her take off her shoe before she stabs somebody with it. Like there's all these elements that like before she does something that you're like, I would never believe that. Like the filmmakers did a good job to not give us that excuse.
Yes.
Like, they were like, no, you've seen her hold her breath underwater multiple times already. Like
they show you her setting up her moves, basically. Like yes. And it's interesting too, because it primes you as the audience member for a number of the things that are coming too, because you're like, wait, she's holding on to her seatbelt. Why is she doing like whatever? Yeah,
probably doesn't work though. Be careful.
I mean, also
wear your seatbelt.
Would like discourage. Yeah.
And wear stilettos, because you just never know.
Yeah,
you might need to stab somebody.
Sure. Yeah, be prepared. You know,
it happened on the awesome balcony scene as well. That she goes outside, she's looking, she grabs the hose, like she prepares, turns up the music, so you're like waiting in anticipation, and it's much more satisfying than her like fight. Oh look, a random hose or something like that. Like it's
totally,
she sets it up, and so that payoff when she's running and launching herself is even better at that point. And
because you see her do those things, you're like, why is she doing that?
Right.
And then you're like, oh, that's why.
And the guy who she chokes as her anchor, he realizes it at the same time as we realize it, which is such a great cut that he's like, and then he's just like, boom. So good.
Yes.
I will say that fight sequences are a thing that I generally only notice when they're bad. Like, when we were all watching Highlander, I was like, this is bad. So that's like my level of skill when it comes to stunt choreography or whatnot. But I was really paying attention here because action movie, spy movie or whatnot. And one of the things that stood out to me that I really liked is related. I love the way that she was resourceful as a fighter and that she was using the things around her. So like when she's knocking people out with like a freezer door or, picking up a pan and like smashing people over the head with, I don't know, there was something very fun about that, which fun is probably not the right word because it's also very bloody and serious and, like Berlin Wall and all that. But I don't know.
It's a balance between, so you see, so she is doing that, but all of the men that she is fighting are not. And so it is like, it's this sort of interplay of like, okay, so they're all trying to just like use their hands and but like she as this like female spy is like, nah, I'm also fighting by like using my brain and being resourceful and like that kind of thing. It's fucking cool.
She's a site-specific fighter. Different fight, no matter what is around.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that when this trailer first came out, I watched it a bazillion times. One of the other reasons that this movie was like super definitely for me is so Cold War, badass spy, Charlize Theron. Charlize Theron as a badass bisexual Cold War spy. Yup. Very cool. There we go. Yeah. Super here for it. Good, great. I liked just most of the way that was dealt with. It does then bring up the, like, bury your gays.
Yeah.
Because Delphine is murdered. This is like, I don't know. This is a tricky one because this movie is based on a graphic novel.
Called Coldest City?
Yes. And Delphine is a gender-bent character. And so the character in the graphic novel also dies, but it's a dude that dies.
Gotcha.
And so like this is one of those things, those like representation questions.
That makes sense why she wasn't that good at being a spy, because she would have been played by a man.
Yeah, exactly. So, everyone knows men can't be spies.
That was a little unbelievable.
Right, yeah, like clearly a lady spy
should be amazing.
Everyone knows women make the best spies. So what's going on here? It's, this is gender bending at work here. I don't know. And but that is a tricky thing that I think there are no good answers for.
Right.
Like, I think that there are very good narrative reasons to have that love interest character die. I think it functions well for the story. But
it doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Right, exactly. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. And there is something potentially to be said for in the source material, the idea of the male love interest being fridged to serve the female protagonist's plot. But, cool, yes, like flip the gender of the love interest and like now you have like queer representation and that's really cool. But then you're also changing the implications of some other things that you're doing. And I don't know. Like I don't know what the right answer is.
Yeah. I felt like I cheered about our lead character being bi, but this is a question that I kept having watching the film is like, is she bi?
Oh.
Because the only time you actually see her, like, we know that she's slept with men, but maybe just as part of her job. And so the only time that we actually see her like enjoying sex and sexually interested in someone is with Delphine. So that I think she could be just a lesbian and like has sex with men as
for her job.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Lots of unanswered questions.
Which,
she's allowed to have her secrets. She's a spy. This movie came out shortly after Drive came out. I don't know where I want this question to go, but is there some, like, was it an answer to Drive? Like, I know it has to be super 80s because it's like this really charged time of like November of 1989, like that's where it's set. But is that something that's like in the zeitgeist right now that we're like, ooh, yay, action 80s?
I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't have a good answer.
I was hoping you guys would
that.
tell me.
I probably there is something to it. I mean, I think in the trailer, I don't think it was actually used in the movie, but in the trailer they had a really great mashup, like Kanye West and I'm not gonna try. There's a really great like 80s mashup. And it sounds really cool, like now, right? Like listening to it. So I don't know. Sure, there is probably a lot of cultural zeitgeisty stuff that is at play in the decision to make this movie in this way. All of her wardrobe, I do know, was like contemporary designers created it for her, and so again, like that's I am totally not the person to comment on this, like, the implications of this fashion stuff, but I think there is almost certainly something there that, like, contemporary fashion designers making these 80s inspired pieces,
right.
Everything she's wearing feels era appropriate, but it also feels like I could wear it. You know, I personally couldn't wear it.
Oh yeah,
someone could wear it right now, and it wouldn't be
right.
You know,
it wasn't like garish, like oh, look at this '80s outfit. It didn't pull you out of it.
Yes.
Watching it in 2017.
Yes, yes, and so I don't know. Probably there's something zeitgeisty, but.
Yeah. Well, not enough backstory or not enough character development on that drive guy. So, just kidding.
I don't know. Something about her whole appearance was the thing that felt most, not grounded, but kind of our time to me. Even though she's got like the Debbie Harry kind of haircut or whatever, that kind of whole look. But in the whole look and feel of everything, that like neon, the dirt and the grime or whatever, she's always like crisp, black and white. So there's something about like her in that way that just seemed more modern and crisp. And I don't know, again, what that decision was, and I can't give any more commentary on it, but that's what I noticed. So
Snark Squad pod, in which we vaguely talk around issues we heard someone mention once.
Hey, listen, I noticed that by myself, okay?
After watching it, I was like, I kind of wish I knew more about the Cold War, and was like wondering if I would have gotten more out of it, that stuff.
I liked the fact that it sort of introduced that setting of the scene very early on by like, okay, this is when it's taking place, but like actually it's not that story. Like the opening is, you know, Berlin Wall falls. We're 4 days before that, and we're not telling that story at all.
Yeah,
that we'll see it. It'll pop up at the end of the movie, but like, And that message also appeared in the sort of the like saturated neon text, and like we are telling this very saturated, constructed, heightened, yes, and its telling of Berlin is very like it's Percival's Berlin.
Yeah,
you know,
right. Oh, totally. Which is why I love. Fun fact: this movie was originally going to be called Berlin, which it is Percival's Berlin, and it's her story. So right. I love like Atomic Blonde. I know it's probably not like it doesn't tell you a lot about what's going on, but it's like Atomic Blonde, Atomic Threat. Like that works for me. And then it's Blonde, that it's like her story, not like how Percival frames Berlin.
Yes. I think that there is something to the framing shift there. Like I understand why you could have called it Berlin. Yeah. I think like that title would have made a lot of sense. But I also, for all the reasons you just said, understand and agree with, I think, their decision to go with Atomic Blonde instead.
That's some of those moments when he's like, I fucking love Berlin. Or she's like, that's Berlin. Like, that's why those are such like heavy, weird moments, because they're like, remember, this is the title of our movie. Just kidding. Yeah. Thank God they don't say, because I'm Atomic Blonde.
Actually, I think probably for that reason, like it is probably for the best.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it in that context, but yes, because there are a ton of those moments that were clearly there with that idea.
And maybe it was just a placeholder title for a while.
But I might have slightly different feelings about it, actually, if it were called Berlin and you had all those moments.
Yeah.
Anyway. You can let us know all of your feelings about this movie and about Berlin, I guess, by finding us on SnarkSquad.com, where we will have a post dedicated to this episode. But you can also chat with us on Twitter at @Snark_Squad. You can find me at My Name is Marines.
I am at Sweeney Says.
I am at Snarky Fern.
Thank you so much to Caitlin for joining us on this week's episode. Thank you to Stefan Chin for the fancy theme music that is playing us out right now. And thank you guys so much for listening. Catch you again next week. Bye.